Apologize ahead of time.
That's it. I'll have to check on things. We'll be as quiet and unobtrusive as we can.
What did your presentation go?
Still alive. They covered like 15 topics.
Oh, sorry, was it locked?
I think so, yeah.
Oh. I think this door is locked. I think this door is definitely locked. Well,
You just haven't started it out?
no. I
Actually do.
want to keep it open so we encourage more people to come in.
I could be dormant for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Be better than you get that.
I don't want anybody to be scared to come in because the door is closed.
Are you saying if they see me, they'll be scared?
Yeah. No, if
Yeah.
they see you, they'll be welcomed.
Okay,
They'll
okay.
feel welcome to come in.
That'll be intimidating if people come in. Been at conferences when you walk through the door and they're actually in front of the presentation.
Yeah, it's always.
Everybody's looking at you.
You walk in like 2 minutes, like, that won't be a big deal. I'll just go
I think we
and
can take it
you
off.
walk in, you're right.
I think you can start.
You can start?
Yeah.
Is it?
It's actually way too.
Oh, 10:45.
Yeah.
In that case, just leave the door open.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see if it's not this one.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of happened last year in NCLive. It was a tough time slot. It was like right, it was right before lunch. It was right after like 5 hours. Everyone was getting hungry.
Yeah, it's tough when they're running for lunch. We try to, we did some changes with our programming, so incorporate small, sitting hours on there.
Snacks.
Snacks, yeah. Sorry. The other one, we hadn't quite developed that yet.
No,
It's either this person or that person.
Or just get better to sit in those
Let's wait and see if this.
My parents were in England. I was born in England.
You're such a fine, distinguished gentleman.
I wish. I wish were around here and say that. You're a lovely person.
Thank you.
Somebody just told me a fine, distinguished individual. And I didn't record it. Don't see anyone else come down the track.
Started.
Well, you could run around the room, find out.
That's okay.
Is it a challenge around this get everywhere?
It's the urban university.
How you been?
Well, I've been well. I'll see you later tonight. Start in the morning. I'll see you in the afternoon as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to our session. So today we'll be talking about implementing discovery at a statewide level through NCLive, which is the North Carolina Library Consortium. I'm Claire Leverett. I'm the Assistant Director of NCLive.
Stephen Gillespie, I'm a solutions architect with Next Libris.
I'm Stephen Brooks. I'm a reference librarian at Durham Technical Community College.
So I'll be talking about our different experiences with the statewide implementation. So first I just want to get a feel for the audience. How many of you all currently have a discovery service? Okay, and how many of you have implemented something at a statewide level with a statewide group?
Just starting to.
Oh, just starting to.
In December.
Okay.
Part of the state.
Great. Well, I hope today's presentation will be helpful for you. All right. So first, what is NCLive? So NCLive is a library consortium in North Carolina. We buy e-resources and also offer other services. We have 205 libraries. And you can kind of see we have our 4 different communities. So we have the UNC system, the public libraries, the community colleges, and the independent colleges and universities, which is the NCICU. So we're a very, very diverse group. And we have libraries of many different sizes. So we have libraries that only have 1 librarian to ARL level institutions. And many different funding models as well. Some libraries are very well funded, some have practically no funding, and the only resources they have are NCLive resources. And the unique thing about NCLive is that we offer the same content for all of our libraries. So it's not an opt-in type of thing, we buy the same content for everyone. And in 2018, we got a 6-year deal for Summit for all of our libraries. So libraries essentially got it for quote-unquote free. It was paid, they were paying NCLive their dues, but Summit was not extra, it was included with everything else. So it was a great opportunity for libraries who previously had not had the means to get discovery to get a discovery service. So we have two different consortia within NCLive. We have the community colleges have a shared ILS called CC-Link, and they have 50+ libraries. And then we also have NC Cardinal, which is a shared ILS with the public libraries that has around 37 libraries. So these two consortia both decided to implement together, and they loaded their catalogs together to Summon. So it made it really easy for any library within those groups who wanted to implement Summon. They basically didn't have to do anything with their catalog. They could just focus on their e-resources. So that was a really big help for those groups. So this is our current Summon implementation status. So we have 63 libraries launched, and when I say launched, I mean that they actually have it on their website. They're using it with their communities and the public. When NCLive says launch, they mean, oh, they've gone through the implementation process. But basically all of our libraries have gone through the implementation process, but only 63 of them have really actually shared it with their websites and their community. And 21 are currently in progress. This is just a further breakdown. You can see that the public libraries are really the biggest group that have libraries that are no longer interested or have kind of withdrawn from the implementation process. I'll talk a little bit later about why that is and what the different challenges all of our communities face implementing. All right, now I'll hand it over to Stephen.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Claire, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. My name is Stephen Gillespie. Like I said, I'm a librarian and also a solutions architect with NCLive. Over the last year or two, I had the honor of working with Stephen and Claire and the rest of the NCLive group on implementing Summon. So today I'd just like to talk a bit about that process, about the implementation process, some of our considerations, our approach to discovery, and really just talk about the idea of library discovery for all, right? Because for all means obviously all of the NCLive libraries, but we also try to reiterate that it's useful for all types of libraries, from the small public libraries all the way to the large academic. And we knew going in that this was new territory for a lot of libraries, particularly those small rural public institutions. Never implemented discovery, didn't have a lot of awareness. So it was really important for us to establish that context. And more than anything, I think what you can take away from this is the idea of getting buy-in is very important. Because even though it's quote unquote free, it's like the free puppy, right? You get the puppy, it's very cute, but then you have to take care of it and do all of the training and whatnot. So we knew we had to establish the context to give these libraries the why they want to implement discovery and talk about the benefits for the library as well as the users. And then also instill the confidence that yes, they can do this. You don't have to be a developer or have coding ability to implement Summon. It is relatively straightforward. So I thought a good starting point would be simply to define discovery. I think if you work in the library industry, you have a concept of what discovery is, but I always like to start with the definition. So I pulled this one off of Marshall Breeding's site, the Library Technology Guides. And as you can see, it's very simple. It's not confusing at all, right? But I shared this specifically because there were so many words of how we were describing discovery, and I'm like, it's not that complicated. So I tried to simplify this a little bit. There are some useful words in here, but after all, discovery is just an interface to find materials that's independent from platforms, right? So you're talking about that single search box of bringing resources together. So with that as a starting point, you can move on to talking about user needs, right? So whether the user's looking for a particular book or an ebook or a video, or they're exploring a topic, maybe they just want to browse the local print resources available, and maybe they're doing a more in-depth research project. Discovery can hit all of these points. So again, reiterating that it's not just for large academic libraries, it can be useful for small libraries as well. So you establish those needs, and then you can talk about the benefits for the user, right? The easy, fast, single search. Discovery's a little over 10 years at this point, so it's not really a new service, but that single search box is still a very relevant concept. So you give that for the users. We also talk about the idea of enhancing discovery by serendipity, right? Making it easy to find the resources they're looking for, but also make it easy to find what perhaps they weren't looking for, right? Help them surface those other results. And then the idea of learning more about topics through exploration, and that's what we're trying to push forward with Discovery, is getting past this idea of searching for a result and retrieving it, getting more into the idea of exploring topics and subjects and resources. Now, benefits for the library. One thing I heard a lot is, I already have a lot on my plate, but the one thing I hear universally from librarians, you can let me know if this is true for you, but they all say we're wearing multiple hats, and they all use that language specifically too. So it's like, do I have the time to manage this? So you have to reiterate that there is a value for the library to invest your time and effort in this. The first one, maximizing usage of resources. Right? You pay a lot of money for your subscriptions, and you spend time curating your collections. You want users to find them. Information literacy, always a big topic with libraries. We like to think that the simple, intuitive interface of a discovery system like Summon helps lower the barrier to entry, so to speak, so it makes it easier for users to search, and hopefully cuts down on the time you have to teach users of multiple interfaces. Library visibility is key, right? It can be that digital front door to your library, just as a user would walk through your doors of your physical space. Discovery can be that virtual environment, so you want to have a nice, clean, inviting atmosphere. And the last one, probably the most important, when you're talking about discovery, there's the interface for the users, but for the librarian, they have to manage the resources. That's where a lot of the work goes into. So with Summon, you get the single point of activation for your resources. And this really varies by the library, right? How they're managing resources. There's a lot of spreadsheets in the mix, right? So consolidating everything to a single system can really have value over time because you're not managing things in multiple places. And with Summon, you add resources once and they take effect in the discovery layer, the A to Z list, the link resolver. So you try to instill that over time, it will save you effort. So put all of these things together, you have the library ecosystem, and your discovery should be at the heart of it. We really think discovery should be that glue that helps binds your resources together. You're bringing your catalog records, your publisher content. You add in things like open access content. You can add millions of records at no cost. You do enrichment activity like altmetrics, synthetics to make the experience a little richer for the user. So that all comes together in that single search box. Then they also have the option to kind of promote the librarians and their library services, right? LibGuides, bring that to the forefront. If you have library workshops or other things you want to promote, you put that in the same interface, right? So you can really take advantage of the real estate, so to speak. So when you have the user's attention, you can really promote your library services. So hopefully that sounds good, and now you just have to do the easy part, which is implement, right? And we knew going in, again, that these are smaller libraries, not maybe a high level of tech ability. So we knew it had to be easy. That was the first consideration. Oops, go back here. And we made the decision that libraries should start with a live product. So we didn't want to ask a lot of configuration questions up front that would be confusing, that would kind of bog them down when they didn't have the proper context. So we wanted to do as much on the library's behalf as possible. And this included branding the site, so it looked like their library's presence. It's not important to the user that they're searching Summon, they should be searching your library. We loaded LibGuides if they had them, catalog records if they were part of the consortium. We loaded all of their NCLive subscriptions, and then did various linking configurations so everything worked. But from day one, they had a fully functioning product that was technically ready for the users. So they just had to look at what they had and then make changes. Of course, they had to be scalable. The old model of project manager plus library plus implementation wouldn't work when you're talking about potentially hundreds of libraries. Our processes had to be repeatable. We had to do things en masse. And what we learned here, it kind of informs everything we do now for Summon moving forward. But we had to develop some new tools to do some of this automated work. And it also included the training and support. That's part of the implementation. We had to scale that up as well. So we grouped everyone into cohorts according to their desired go live dates. And then we delivered a series of live webinars. And we wanted them to be live because we just felt that was much more engaging than simply saying, here's a recording, go look at it. An informal poll here, how many people have actually watched a recording that was sent to them after the fact. right? Nobody, sometimes, right? Yeah, when you're having your coffee, maybe making coffee in the background. In addition, we also gave everyone homework this time. So it's kind of like being back in school. And we brought them along slowly, giving them homework over a 6-week timeline, so they hit all of the major points of the implementation and were ready to go live. And we also used Basecamp. If you're not familiar with that, that's a tool to facilitate communication, help communicate with staff, but also get the librarians talking to each other and sharing best practices. And the last one probably goes without saying, but being flexible. Dealing with those unknowns and adjusting accordingly. There were configuration issues we had to correct. It's kind of the nature of working in software. You put it out there and it's not till users start hammering on the system that you see what works and what doesn't. But more than anything with these other points, we realized there's no replacement for that one-on-one direct communication with the librarians. So while the process worked for very many, we found others were lagging behind, so we tried to reach out to them directly. And Claire will talk a bit more about some of the workshops we created and other efforts to kind of get everyone involved. And the last point there, it was really about forging networks, and I like to make the distinction between community and network, because the network really is a targeted set of human resources that have expertise that can help you along the way. So that was basically everything we considered in a nutshell, and I'll hand it over to Stephen, and he can give you the real life librarian experience. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stephen Brooks. As I said, I'm a reference librarian at Durham Technical Community College in North Carolina. We are a 2-year college. We have an open enrollment policy, so we offer everything from nursing degrees and associate degrees for people who want to transfer to a 4-year school, to adult high school in English as a foreign language. We have about 18,000 students, and we are a member of the North Carolina Community College system and a member of CC-Link. Almost everybody who is a member of CC-Link, other way around, almost everybody who's a member of the North Carolina Community College system is a member of CC-Link, but there are a few outliers. So our catalog is shared by most of the community colleges in North Carolina. At the time we implemented Summon, our library had 8 permanent staff. That included 6 librarians and 2 library techs, and that's to cover 3 libraries, 1 on each of our 3 campuses. At the time we had about 40,000 physical items in our collections and 90 plus databases. Now when we say 90 plus databases, we're actually, like all of those various ProQuest databases that are broken down, we're counting each one individually. So, and a lot of our databases we get through NCLive, but not all of them. So when we heard that NCLive and Libris were rolling out Summon for NCLive members, I really wanted to get on board. I thought it was important to be able to search once for library resources across all of our types of content. And our library, the CC-Link catalog, the version that we're using, is kind of old-fashioned. And it doesn't have the most intuitive search and search results. It also, you have to dig deep into the power search in order to get a relevance ranking. So we had trouble trying to teach our patrons like multiple databases to search and how the catalog is different from other databases and that kind of thing. And I thought bringing it all together would really help the patron experience. And we, as Stephen was saying, we have the potential to put that search box right on the library homepage. And so I wanted to do that. I wanted us to look like a library. You go to the library homepage because you want to find something, not because you want to know necessarily what time we're open, although that might be it. But the main thing you're going to a library page for is to find resources. And also, as Claire said, it is quote unquote free for us to implement. So the implementation process really is like going to school, and Stephen covered all of these. But what was nice was that, from my perspective, was that the training was broken down into discrete chunks. So, and it was each step kind of built on the step before it. So in one step, for example, we were inputting the databases that Durham Tech subscribes to that we don't get through NCLive. And so even though most of that work was already done for us, which is a great benefit to a library of being part of a statewide rollout in this case, we had to go in there and add some of our own databases, which was fine. The training materials, the documentation they provide is great. Homework assignments, it was very much, I mean, it really was like taking a class. You'd have a homework assignment after the webinar, and then you do all the, you do the work you were supposed to do, and if you had any trouble, you went into Basecamp and got advice from Libris or saw what other questions other libraries were asking during the implementation process. And so we were actually in the first cohort to do this. So I think we have a successful implementation of Summon at Durham Tech. And these are some tips if you're thinking about, from a library's perspective, participating in something like this. These are some of the things that made it really helpful for us. I don't want to go too far and call myself really tech savvy, but I knew enough about working databases and that kind of thing that I was comfortable with the details of inputting our resources and making sure that I found the right things to turn on in Summon and make them available. And also to implement some of the, there's a lot of flexibility in Summon. The way that you can you can change the name of a facet to something that's more intuitive for your patrons, for example. So it's got that kind of functionality in it. The support network, obviously with Libris and NCLive being available, but also being able to work with other librarians. And I knew some librarians in the community college system whose libraries had already implemented Summon on their own before the NCLive rollout. They had bought their own version. And they were great resources when I'd look at their website and say, how do you do that? You know, I want something like what you have. That's really helpful. And for ongoing success, it's a dynamic environment, and things change, and not everything works perfectly. And so it's very important to me, as the primary person who works in Summon, managing Summon now at our library, is to get feedback about it. And I can usually rely on my fellow librarians for feedback. I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. So after implementation, having some time to reflect on it, these are some of the benefits that we've realized from implementing Summon. There's in our library orientation or library instruction sessions that we do with, say, an English 111 class or a public speaking class or something like that, we're spending less time teaching individual databases. We teach students how to use Summon and use the filters in Summon to filter their results. And then when they get a result, it bounces them into a database, and we show them, for articles, for example, how to download print email and cite, and tell them that you'll be able to find these things in pretty much any database. It might look a little bit. For library catalog results, we show them, okay, so it's going to show all of the holdings for CC Link. This is how you find what Durham has. And we do get better relevance and easier relevance ranking for our library catalog results, even when somebody filters just to library catalog results. And as I was working on this presentation last week, my colleague pointed out that since we've implemented Summon, it appears that our interlibrary loan borrowing has gone way up. These are not big numbers. We're a small school, but I looked at her, I didn't provide the graph here, but I looked at her chart and it shows an immediate spike to this point in our academic year compared to previous academic years at this point. And it's good to be able to pay it forward too. So I've been able to help a couple other people with some basic but tricky Summon things, or like integrating with LibGuides and that kind of stuff. Some of the challenges that we've run across, we still don't have a search box, that front door to our collections on our library page. That's because we have at Durham Tech one half-time person who does all the work on the website. And so if it doesn't just plug in easily with the CMS, it's not going to get done. But we've talked about it. Maybe someday we'll be able to do that. Like I said, getting feedback, I get more feedback from librarians and end users. And I know not everything works, and I'm afraid end users might be giving up on their searches. But once in a while, I'll just get, I'll get a notice that a link didn't work or something like that, but my librarian colleagues are very helpful with feedback. And the other thing is, Summon is so smooth and pretty, it's important for librarians to know what it doesn't handle well. And this isn't a criticism of Summon, this is just the complexity of working with many, many different vendors with all kinds of different content and different metadata that they're providing to Summon too. But one example is that our catalog is not real time. It's not a live catalog in Summon. Periodically, CC Link sends a catalog refresh to Summon, and then results are updated. So for example, when we weeded a lot of books this summer, there were things we'd gotten rid of that were still showing up. And our newest books take sometimes a few weeks to get into summon search results. There are some databases, a great example is nursing databases, where their facets are different from other types of content. So if you're looking for evidence-based care sheets and you want to do that facet, and you're looking for a particular condition affecting men 50 and over, then you're going to want to go into the nursing database. And then, like I said, some providers and Summon aren't working as well together necessarily. And then we also have examples like the International Journal of Mass Emergencies and Disasters, which an associate professor at some college is responsible for all the tech services of. And so that's just something that's not going to get indexed in Summon, but it's important to our program. So it can be important to know the programs you work with, where their resources are. Anyway, Summon is not the panacea. It's, but it is a really powerful resource, and overall I think it's been a successful implementation.
Great. So I'm going to talk about our adoption and then also the network of support that we try to build. So as you may have heard, we had some early cohorts, and those libraries were really motivated to adopt, and they went fairly quickly. Stephen at Durham Tech was part of one of those first 4 cohorts, and then we had later cohorts where the libraries weren't as motivated for various reasons, or were kind of slower with the process. So here are some things that we tried to do to kind of help people along and get them to actually finishing and putting the box on the website. So at NCLive, I did most of the follow-up with libraries because they know me, and I am not a Summon expert, so often I could not actually help them with their issues, but then I would forward them to either Jill Postlethwaite, who's our customer success rep, or Lindsay Leonard, who helped with our implementation. So I followed up in 3 ways. I had a chart of kind of everyone's implementation status. I would email them. I would also send them this like really quick 3-question survey, which I tried to make it really easy for them to fill out. And then I also did a lot of phone calls. I mostly did phone calls because I found that actually talking to someone on the phone would get the conversation started a lot more, and I would hear all these things, which, it would just kind of spark their memory, and I would hear a lot more about kind of what their situation was. And I found it really helped to be proactive because for me to call them, because a lot of times I would call these libraries and they would say, oh yeah, we're still really interested. Thank you for reaching out. We just didn't know who to contact. We have this issue, but we just didn't know, we didn't know how to get help on it. So, and some of these libraries, they couldn't even like log into the admin portal. They had forgotten their username and password, or in some cases they were confusing Basecamp with the admin portal. So, some of these libraries really were kind of so lacking of the tech knowledge that they were kind of confusing those kind of basic things. So it really helped to reach out via phone. This is just an example of my 3-question survey. So once I talked to libraries, I tried to group them into reasons that they weren't going live, and this is so we could try to follow up with them in a more systematic manner. And it did vary by type of library, but the 4 main reasons I found were, one of them was a technical issue. So this was a library that just had something technical with Summon that they couldn't figure out. This was definitely the easiest one to solve. I just handed them off to Jill or Lindsay, and they worked with them one-on-one to figure out the problem. The biggest reason that libraries had for not kind of finishing up Summon was an internal staffing issue. And so this was, the library just didn't have the resources or the staff time to finish it. I would call them up and they would say, oh yeah, we're still really interested in finishing it, but we have this other project that we're just working on right now and we need to finish that one first. Or they would say, yeah, our person who is implementing just went on leave and they're not going to be back for 2 months. So that was definitely the most frustrating issue, because you knew, oh, they're still really interested in this, but there's nothing really we can do to help them out. We can't do the implementation for them. We did as much as we could, like Stephen talked about. Another reason was the value proposition. So this is, you know, I would call them up, and a lot of times this was community colleges or public libraries. And a lot of these schools had basically finished their implementation. They had done everything. They just hadn't put the box on their website. And they would say, yeah, we just think, our students think it's confusing. Our students think Summon is confusing. They would use the Summon search box on the NCLive website, and they would say, our students get overwhelmed with all the search results. We want to show them the individual databases that they can go to. And so with this one, it was, you know, I tried to kind of explain the reasons behind, you know, why we thought Summon was, you know, a good tool for you to have. Something else that Stephen mentioned with, you know, not everything is indexed in Summon. They would say, well, we don't want to even, if not everything is indexed, it's more confusing to have it there than to not have it there, because then students think that everything is in it when it's not. And so and all these types of perspectives to me seem to be coming from a librarian perspective, where they knew it wasn't a perfect tool, and so they didn't want to put it on there. Instead of just, you know, having the benefits of it, they decided not to use it at all. And so, you know, I tried to explain as much as I could, but ultimately, you know, I didn't want to come across as trying to be pushy, like you need to use this tool. So we hold a lot of webinars where they could hear from their peer institutions about why they were using Summon, why they thought it was helpful. We also did peer mentorships, so they could kind of, you know, we would hook them up with, you know, one of the community colleges, Surrey Community College, had implemented Summon a few years back, and they were so they were very knowledgeable about it. So we would, you know, hook them up with the library director there. You know, talk to, you know, I want to put you in touch with Surrey about, so you can kind of talk to them about some of your issues with Summon. So that was helpful. And then we had another group that was waiting to launch. These were schools that were just like, oh, we want to wait until the end of the semester or whatever to launch. So community by community, with the community colleges, the challenges were definitely the value proposition. We still have some libraries that they had signed up, but they're no longer going through with it just because they don't think it's valuable for their community. Schools with small staff, competing projects, also lack of tech support, like Stephen Brooks mentioned, where they just don't have a tech person, like they can't put the search box on their website because they don't have the staff who knows how to kind of manage their website or doesn't have the time. So the support we tried to provide, peer mentors. We also had kind of a common search box code that we could share with libraries if they wanted kind of the tabbed search box, or they looked at another library site, oh, I really like that. We could kind of get the code from them and share it. For the public libraries, their challenges were limitations of county websites. A lot of them have county websites, and they told us, yeah, we can't use JavaScript search boxes on our website. So we developed a non-JavaScript search box code that they could use. A lot of them too, they were worried about all the public resources not indexed in Summon. So, you know, things like, they have a lot of audiovisual resources, things like Freegal or Hoopla. They're just not indexed in Summon, or that we have a historic newspapers collection that they use a lot too. So for that, we tried to talk about, you know, here are some alternatives. You can use the sidebar, you know, the boxes on the side. You can use best bets, things like that, to try to highlight those resources, even if they're not showing up in the search results. We also held public library specific webinar with 2 of our public libraries who did implement Summon, to try to, you know, show them, here's what some other public libraries are doing. So that was some things we tried to do. The independent colleges and universities, they had about half of them were using a different discovery system, so they were kind of set with that, but the other half did end up implementing Summon. They had similar problems to the community colleges with small staff. So the UNC system was the really interesting one to me because they have a lot of resources, they have a lot of staff. I thought, okay, they're going to be set, they're going to be just like implementing super quickly, and then they're going to be good to go. They actually were some of the slowest implementers, slower than the community colleges, and usually it was because they were doing a lot of customizations and they had a lot of really detail-oriented work they were trying to do. Some of the smaller schools, they were just like, whatever, we'll just put it up on the website, we don't care if it's not perfect, we'll put it up there and we'll figure it out as we go along. With the UNC system schools, they were like, no, we want everything to be perfect before we put it up there. So their challenges were more trying to get those customizations in place and get it to a point where they felt comfortable sharing it with their communities. So for them, the one-on-one support, I think, was really helpful for getting them through. So the network of support that we tried to build for our libraries, we offered webinars. So I think we've had about 6 webinars so far specifically for NCLive libraries. And like I said, we did try to also target them to certain communities. We had a public library webinar, and this one, Summon Made Easy, these were for the community colleges, where this one, we really tried to emphasize kind of the value of Summon and how it is mostly kind of it's set up for you, so the implementation is not that difficult. We also have had several in-person users groups. Oops, not sure why Groups is not showing up there. But this is a photo of a users group we had at our annual meeting, so people could kind of see each other in person, and that was helpful, so they could kind of see, oh, yeah, your library does such and such, and I really like that feature, and kind of exchange information that way. We also have set up peer mentors, so if we know a library is struggling, we'll kind of informally, Jill and I from NCLive will think, or Jill from NCLive and I will think about different libraries we know that may be similar to the library struggling, and we can kind of connect them. We also set up a listserv with our Summon libraries, and I'm also thinking about, are there other ways we can kind of connect people virtually, like through a forum on the NCLive website, or maybe some kind of third-party app. I know somebody mentioned Slack could be helpful, so we're also thinking about that too. So when we were thinking about our network of support, some considerations were that we wanted diverse offerings for all the different skill levels. So we have some libraries that they really just need that basic stuff, like how do I use the admin portal? And then some libraries are really advanced and they want all that, the more advanced knowledge. So we wanted to have kind of a range of different webinars for the different types of libraries. And we also wanted to include in our users groups and webinars, include library voices. So have libraries be able to hear from other libraries, have discussion with other libraries. But we also know that some of our libraries just really wanted that instruction. They just wanted Jill to demonstrate, okay, here's how you do such and such. So we wanted to provide both of those different things. And like I said, we also want to build venues for virtual conversations. I think my next idea is some kind of forum on the NCLive website so people can add to the forum and then kind of look back through the history. And something else just that would be nice to develop is like skill sharing with other libraries, so you would know like, oh, this person is an expert in such and such, let me contact them. If we had like a directory like that, I think that would be really helpful. Right now it's just kind of informally, who do we know in the NCLive office? So our lessons learned, I think from the ex-Libris side, it was building long-term relationships, and that one-on-one support was really essential to getting a lot of these libraries through the implementation process. I know a ton of libraries who they just needed to connect with somebody one-on-one, and the ex-Libris support portal wasn't really that place. It was having somebody actually email them and schedule a phone call with them. And I think especially for the libraries that were in the later cohorts who maybe signed up for Summon but weren't fully committed when they signed up, we needed more time up front to communicate the value of Summon and why it would be good for their specific library and maybe what other types of peer libraries were doing. Just more time to help them, realize, okay, this is why Summon is good and why I'm going through this implementation process. And from NCLive's side, I think we could have provided more documentation on our website. I think there was just kind of we needed a central location, not necessarily through Basecamp, where people could find that information. So I think we could have done that in the future. All right, that's it. Any questions? Yes.
I'm curious, I'm not familiar with NCLive. What services were you providing to all these institutions before you started doing this?
We provide a hosted proxy service, so we provide easy proxy to around 100 libraries. We provide a website service where libraries can get like a discounted website. These are some of our services.
Are you funded just by member dues, or are you also getting state funding or other sources?
Three of our communities are state funded, and one of them is dues.
What was
The
that?
the private colleges and universities are pay with dues.
Okay, but
And the
the
other three
state
are state,
institutions, the
yeah.
state is paying for them, paying you on their behalf.
Yes, it just comes directly from the state.
So all of the state institutions are automatically in your group?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
We're all different partners, I guess, the institutions and community colleges and public libraries. Were they all, before moving to Summon, I guess they're all on different platforms, so like they're using all different ILSs and everything?
Yes, most of them, except for kind of the groups that we talked about, CC Link and NC Cardinal, yeah. So that did make it difficult. I mean, there are kind of just a handful of main ones, so, I mean, and sometimes like, there were a couple libraries doing TLC, which I remember doesn't really work super great with Summon, but we would know like, oh, this other library did TLC, and so we would kind of use that connecting peer institutions to be like, oh, this is how this other library did it.
Okay, thank you.
So how long did you say that your deal was? You say it was 6 years?
6 years, yeah.
So, noticing that some of, specifically like your public libraries, were not picking it up, is there any then hesitancy about, potentially renewing the deal? Because it seems to be kind of, not geared toward, but it's really only being picked up by certain like demographics of your library system. Is there any hesitancy with that in the future?
I don't think so, because we have so many libraries that are using it, and we didn't provide one before, so it's kind of just like an added bonus that we can provide that. And more public libraries are implementing it. We have a couple that have just signed up, so yeah, I think with those public libraries, they're not really using anything. So yeah.
Did the publics that did implement already, were they the ones that you would have expected?
No,
Larger systems,
no,
or were
they're
they sort of
not.
mixed?
Actually, well, Wake County, which is one of the biggest, they already had it. Charlotte Mecklenburg, the other biggest, they just signed up to implement. But some of our first public libraries, well, one of them was like Farmville Public Library, which is like one of our smallest public libraries. So yeah, it was really interesting. You couldn't necessarily pick out who is going to be. I think it really had to do with like the library director of the public library, whether they, wanted to do it.
Did most of the publics also try to get regular book catalog info as well, or were they mostly taking advantage of it as discovery of a variety of NCLive resources?
Yeah, a lot of them were doing, I think, we did load a bunch of them. We did load the NCLive, or the NC Cardinal catalog, so the catalog was in there, but a lot of them chose to have, they would have their catalog search separate, and then they would have Summon, which sometimes included the catalog and sometimes not. But I think for the public libraries especially, it was important to have that catalog piece separate, because so many public library patrons, they just want to find books. So yeah, I know a lot of them did keep it separate.
I neglected to mention while we were talking about this, that at Durham Tech, we both have the summon search and still have our separate catalog search and where you can navigate to databases individually.
Yeah, I think the public libraries too, every time I would call them up and say, hey, are you guys still interested? They would say, yes, we just haven't gotten around to it, or we haven't had the time. So a bunch of those libraries that I put on the withdrew category, I just hadn't heard from them in so long that I'm like, okay, I'm moving them over to withdraw. But I think they're still I think most of them are still potentially interested. It's just not a priority, I guess.
So you mentioned some of the things like Freakle and Hoopla weren't in there. Is that like Overdrive wouldn't be in there and all of that kind of thing? Was it more like focused towards like journals and articles and things like that?
Yeah, well, at Overdrive, actually, we did add it because those have MARC records, so they were able to add Overdrive. But yeah, for the other things like Hoopla and Freakle, they're not journal articles, so they don't have like the records that you can add to Summon. So those were the types of things where we like said like you can highlight them on the side or.
So it needs to have a MARC record then to be included, or just some sort of record.
Yes, I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
The ex-Libris people can elaborate on that if they want.
yeah, Summon has its own index, which has like almost 4 billion records in it. And then libraries, if they have their own MARC records from vendors, they can load those as well. So we have a lot of things covered, not everything yet, but there's always ways to help surface the content regardless.
Was there a reason you decided to go with Summon and not Primo? Because they're both ex-Libris products?
I think Primo is an ILS, isn't it?
Works with Alma. Not as Primo VE does work with Alma, but you can have Primo just separate as a discovery layer as well.
Yeah, I think considering the audience, Summon was a better fit, just from the technical standpoint. It's a little easier to implement. Primo definitely offers a lot of value for the libraries that are replacing the ILS
Yes.
with that full integration that it offers.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Oh,
One quick question. Actually, more for you. How do you define success?
That's a good question because my preconceived notion of what was going to happen was very different from what did happen, and we just got to a point where, I've been putting work into it, and you can tell that I'm making progress, but then you get to the top of that curve and you realize you can still get up there, but at some point it's time just to put it out there. I got to the point where I wanted other people to see it and use it, and then find out what we needed to do beyond that. So rather than waiting until I had something I thought was perfect to put out there and then find out it's not, I wanted to go ahead and get it out there so that, and I talked with my director about this too. She was very supportive of this. This was, that was key to our implementation. But just put it out there and see what happened. And, the people who had something to say said, this is great. And didn't get a lot of feedback. We did a lot of trying to push it on campus and promote it. But I think over time, awareness is growing. And it's just easier. It's more intuitive for our students. It's easier. It lets us spend time talking about other things when we're teaching students how to find resources. I don't want to have too many steps in there. A lot of the students who come to us may be like first-generation college students or something, and they're not, this whole world of scholarly journals and other kinds of formats may be completely new to a lot of them. And it gives us a chance not to say, well, this is what ProQuest does, and this is what Gale does, and this is what Science Direct does. So I think success is, it's made things better. And we got to a point where we were confident enough that people were going to use it. But yeah, that's
Any other questions? I have a follow-up. So is there anything, so with the benefit of hindsight, if you were to do it again right from scratch, is there something you can do to more objectively measure success? So the world was like this before, the world is like this after. Wasn't that a good idea that we went through all this time, effort, money to do this? Does anyone run any analytics? Does anyone have anything to compare with?
we did run usage data with libraries that had before they had implemented this discovery service, before they had implemented Summon and after. We didn't see any differences in the usage data over like, I think we did it over 6 months.
Okay.
I mean, it didn't decrease, it didn't necessarily increase though. Or I think there was a slight increase, like a 0.1% increase or something, but it wasn't significant.
Which translates to people were not searching for more stuff. Is that what
They
that
were not
translates to?
clicking on more, it wasn't the summon data, it was like the actual ProQuest data, or it was actually the actual database data, usage data. Yeah, so they weren't, clicking on more articles or whatever. That was over like a 6-month period, so it might, if we did it longer term, it might increase. We were hoping to see it increase.
I guess we can't measure how long it takes me to find something 6 months ago versus it takes me to find that.
Yeah, other than just like,
Have a stopwatch.
qualitative feedback from users, yeah, we didn't do any, we haven't done any like user studies or anything. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.